Good evening from London, wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are listening to Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, your one-stop shop for all professional wrestling, insight, news, and reviews on a daily basis. I've had a couple of days off the show, but it's great to be back, and we have a stacked show to talk about today. We're going to be previewing this weekend in professional wrestling. Firstly, SmackDown, then AEW Collision. We're going to be talking about how WWE could rebuild LA Knight, along with how AEW can get people to tune back in to AEW Collision, because unfortunately, that is starting to become a bit of an issue. But firstly, let me introduce the panel for today's show, and let's start with the co-host of the show, the man who's been holding down the fort the past 3 days, Clark Taylor. Clark, how are you today?
I'm fired up. I'm on a roll right now. We did off the air and the normal daily on Tuesday. I did technically 2 episodes of Take It to the Table on Wednesday, as well as hosting Wednesday. And then, of course, the main event, Throwback Thursday yesterday with our other good friends on the panel. Won't spoil it for you here, Ben. But I'm stoked to see them again. As usual, it's like it's a big old reunion. It's a Thursday night reunion here on the daily broadcast, and I'm fired up to talk about all things wrestling, whether it's AEW or WWE, SmackDown or Collision. I'm excited to get into it, and we got a sweet list of topics.
We absolutely do. And without further ado, the head of Opinion Shoot Wrestling Republic, Anthony Ricciardi. How are you, Anthony?
Doing all right. It's been an active couple days. I did the 2 take-its with Clark on Wednesday, did Throwback yesterday, and coming in for the Grand Slam today.
Oh, it's a lot of fun when you do quite a few shows in a few days, but at the same time, you're like, you kind of, at least when I'm in the, whenever I end up going and doing a few shows in the same day or whatever, I end up coming off the shows and I'm like thinking I'm still on the air. For some reason, it's like a weird effect afterwards where you kind of like don't realize, like it's just so weird. But also joining us, we have Shad. Shad, how are you today?
Sorry about that. I'm doing good, man. Pretty, I guess, saying normal week for me. Got to do a double time on Tuesday as well. And then, of course, Throwback Thursday, one of my favorite days of the week. Was a great topic yesterday. If y'all haven't watched it, I definitely suggest watching it. And I'm liking the slate of topics that we had today. I'm excited to watch SmackDown tonight as well as Collision tomorrow. So yeah, let's get into it.
Let's do that, because, of course, last Saturday, Crown Jewel, Saudi Arabia, the tribal chief Roman Reigns successfully defended his undisputed Universal Championship against LA Knight. Yeah, and of course, LA Knight currently one of the most over acts in the whole of professional wrestling, but he's now lost the big one. So the question is, how can WWE rebuild him? How can WWE keep his momentum, right? Because we don't want this to be a one and done thing. We don't just want this to, just fade away, be, nothing. We want this to be, the start of LA Knight becoming a star in this company. He's somebody who could hold a championship. He has proven that, and he is so over right now. But Clark, I'll go to you first. How do you think WWE should rebuild LA Knight?
Well, first, I do have to say from your intro that the post-show effect is absolutely real. But the positive side of that is I have cut back deeply on cursing, since I do stay in show mode post-show, as you do, Ben. But let's talk about LA Knight and the rebuild. I'm not necessarily sure that we need to rebuild him. Just continue to build him. Keep stacking the blocks. I don't know who the next matchup is, but that's the key here. What we don't need is a giant step back. Anything from Roman Reigns at this current moment in the WWE landscape is a slight step back. If that's the rivalry you just exited, essentially, right? There's plenty of choices on SmackDown for LA Knight to feud with, but he needs to stay high on the card to keep any momentum that was built on the way to Reigns, which there was plenty. Yeah, right? I mean, come on. He is still over, as much as we talked about last week before the show, or leading into Crown Jewel, that it's kind of a no-win situation for LA Knight in a way because of the inevitability of Reigns retaining the title. He still did a great job at that show and came out looking strong. I've got to give him credit, right? After watching it, he still is strong. And I have no doubt in my mind that the crowd will still receive him as well as he's been received when he shows up tonight on SmackDown. But whoever's on the other side, it needs to be someone important. And that's the key to the operation to me. I'm not exactly sure. I don't have a call off the top of my head that I would specifically go with, other than maybe, and it would be interesting, Logan Paul.
Oh, well, that would be interesting. The United States Champion. I mean, that is the match that I want to see. That is the match I want them to build towards, but I don't think they're going to do it until WrestleMania. I think that they're going to probably build it up until then, or at least I think that's what, they should do, because I do think that can be a major, major match. But yeah, let's talk about the likes of, Sami Zayn. Now, Sami Zayn is still over, but he's not as over as he was in that lead-up match against Roman Reigns. And you can say that for a lot of people who faced Roman Reigns in his championship reign, right? And that's not me burying Roman Reigns. I said it earlier this week, and I'll say it again, that we're going to miss this championship reign once it ends. But, I mean, LA Knight, they've got to make sure they treat him right and they make him feel, high up the card, like you said, Clark. Tonight on SmackDown, they've already announced he will be facing Grayson Waller. And that seems very, very random to me, but hopefully it's leading to something bigger. Anthony, what about you? How are you feeling heading into SmackDown? How do you think WWE should book LA Knight?
This is something that I've touched on previously on the Daily. I said that the U.S. title was probably the logical move for him long term, because with Ray holding the belt, it wouldn't have worked. You needed a heel champion. Logan Paul is a smart heel champion. He's easy to hate. He's getting the social media attention. It's a smart move. I thought it was a tricky move to put him in a match with Roman, because realistically, he didn't have a chance. But he could get made to look strong, and I think he looked decent off of that. Like, he wasn't buried. So I don't really think he lost much momentum, but I think the logical move is the U.S. title, whether it's at the Royal Rumble. He doesn't have to win it at the Rumble. Maybe he wins it at Mania, but I think that should be the long term. Let him win that title and let him have a decent run with it. We've seen what Gunther could do with the Intercontinental title, brought the prestige back to it. I think LA Knight is somebody that could bring that prestige back. And honestly, if LA Knight's chasing Logan Paul, Logan could actually bring intrigue into that title of an interest. We haven't had that in a long time for the U.S. title to actually mean something. A Logan LA Knight feud, I think, could absolutely get there.
100%.
Sorry, I had a mic issue there, but absolutely, Anthony. I could not agree with you more on that one. Logan Paul, LA Knight, that is big time. But what about you, Shad? How are you feeling going into SmackDown tonight? And what do you think should be next for LA Knight? Yeah.
Nah, I don't want to be the one that has to just say I agree with y'all, but I definitely agree with all you guys in it. I think a mid-card title reign for him as the U.S. champion would be beneficial. You think about the U.S. title and what it is with Logan Paul. To Anthony's point, good, strong heel, but also very popular as a just superstar and whatnot. And I feel like a feud between them, maybe at Mania, could be a big time pay-per-view match, and it could be a big moment for LA Knight and continue the trajectory of being a very popular star that he is. The back and forth promo will be great. So that's what I kind of see for him. I feel like his next step is getting that mid-card title, having a strong reign, and then, eventually we position him back into the main event seen with that Universal title or the WWE title. In regards to what builds before the Logan Paul, I wouldn't jump right into it. We got a couple months before we can get to Mania season for that. There's a couple people I put in a feud with. One, I would like to see him feud with Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. Have a program with them. I think you guys can play off of history that they had together before on TNA, right? Like they've worked together, and I feel like Bobby is a very strong, top of the notch heel on SmackDown. Having a program, going against the Street Profits too with his faction and playing a good storyline like that can make LA Knight come out looking stronger and stronger. I would like to maybe even see him versus Kevin Owens if Kevin Owens goes heel. I think that'd be a great one. I think SmackDown has a lot of top heavy guys that can be in the title picture but aren't in the title picture at the moment that you can feud with LA Knight and continue to build him as well. And then we can eventually hopefully get to him and Logan Paul for the U.S. title at Mania. So that's kind of why I'm seeing that. I hope it doesn't, give them nothing like kind of how they did after the tag team titles with Sammy and KO. With Sammy's starting to do a little bit more now, but I think they got to keep, building that momentum with LA Knight.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no pun intended, but
Yeah.
there accidentally was one. But no, I mean that's a great that's a great point. Bobby Lashley would certainly be an interesting feud. Another name who I don't think they should do because he's not at the top of the card, but if they had built him, they could have done, is Cameron Grimes. I mean, it was that feud in NXT which got LA Knight, super over there, where they were feuding for the $1 million belt. But it just feels like on SmackDown that it's always the same few stars on the show each week. And I understand why. You want them to be on the show every week so the audience knows them. But it's just like, it feels like Bobby Lashley's done next to nothing, even with this new faction with the Street Profits. And I know the entire thing is that we've got to wait or whatever, but it feels like with quite a few guys on SmackDown, AJ Styles included, they've just done nothing really. It's kind of like if you're not in the bloodline, or you're not feuding with a bloodline, then you're kind of, in a bad position. I mean, would you agree with that, Clark?
I would, 100%. I mean, for me, there's a lot of directions you can go LA Knight wise. It's one of those things too, because we're heading into Mania season and the Rumble, I would mention, right? As much as I do want to see him and Logan Paul feud, I love that Shad brought up that it would be at WrestleMania. Because I don't love when the mid-card title takes stars out of the Rumble. I want LA Knight in the Rumble, logically speaking, right? So a long-term build to a Logan Paul and a mid-card title, I would prefer over a short-term one where we're trying to get it, and we end up with that being a match that's on the card at the Rumble. And that's just personally because I'm such a huge fan of the Royal Rumble.
You can get Logan Paul to eliminate him at the Rumble, and you could just build the feud easy,
or the other way around,
or other way around. Yeah,
right. To your point, outstanding. And then adding in the Bobby Lashley factor with the Profits, I don't mind either. I don't mind LWO being involved in a feud with LA Knight because they're at least in the middle of the card. They have been booked that way thus far. And I know our next topic.
That's true.
We're going to get into a little bit of LWO and, the Wall Street Profits, as I like to call them.
It's the name they should have used.
Yeah, it's the name they should have used. But either way, the New Age Hurt Business is my other one that I like to say.
The New Age Hurt Business is funny.
The New Age Hurt Business.
You trademarked both of them, didn't you, Clark?
I didn't.
Oh, you better.
Yeah, the New Age Hurt Business. I'm excited about.
Missed opportunity, that is. But I mean, let's move on to the next topic. You just mentioned the LWO club. Let's move on to talk about Carlito of the LWO. Of course, just a few months ago, he came in. He returned to the company, and he helped Rey Mysterio and Santos Escobar defeat the Wall Street Profits, as they should have been called. But yeah, I mean, at the time we complained about that, and rightly so, to be honest with you, because Bobby Lashley, the Street Profits, they were starting to get some momentum. It just felt like they lost it during that, and honestly, they've just not got it back since. And that is just very simply a little frustrating. I tonight, and this is a hot take, but I think Bobby Lashley should just absolutely murder Carlito. I love Carlito, but I think Bobby Lashley just isn't being booked right, in this moment in time. I honestly would just have Bobby Lashley go in there, have them, battle it out for maybe like 3 minutes, and then 3 minutes in, spear again, and then hurt lock, tap out, Bobby Lashley with the win. Clark, what about you then? What are you feeling going into this match tonight?
This one is wild to me. So I went to a house show way back in the day when I was in high school at the Anaheim Pond, right? Or the Honda Center nowadays, in Anaheim, right across from Disneyland. Anyway, the net of it is I bought a Carlito t-shirt that night, but I went to that arena wanting to buy a Bobby Lashley t-shirt, and then I watched Carlito get squashed by Umaga, and it bugs me to this day. It still bugs me. I want Carlito's old music back. If we're really going to have Carlito, let's get Carlito. I don't want Diet Carlito. I want Carlito. I want the King of Cool. That's what I want. That's just me personally, not to get too fired up about this. Bobby Lashley, also one of my all-time faves. Loved his initial run, loved his return, loved his work in MMA, loved his work in TNA. The guy is a stud. To your point, there's no reason this shouldn't be a squash. And I think there's no reason this should have been booked. It doesn't make sense. We have Carlito back finally for the first time in a long time, and you have an opportunity to make him look good. And he does matter to a group of the fan base in a way that you can introduce him to younger fans who didn't see him and his excellence. People forget Carlito was the guy who got pinned in the final two of the Elimination Chamber before the first ever Money in the Bank got cashed in. Edge cashed it in on John Cena after a roll-up on Carlito to end an Elimination Chamber match. I mean, this guy was really, really, really on fire, and I saw a much different future for him at that time than it's turned out to be, but there's still a chance for nostalgia's sake and talent's sake alone to build him, to throw him in there with Bobby Lashley right now. And feels like one of those things that sketchily could just be a 50-50 booking type thing, where I'm afraid that they're both going to kind of look good in a short match, and then one of the two goes over, and what do we do now? What are we doing here is what I would ask.
What are we doing here? Your favorite quote. But I would honestly, I do understand your fear there, and I'm worried about the same thing. I'm worried Carlito's going to win this week, Lashley's going to win next week. But here's the thing. This is how I look at it. Carlito, does he need a win? No. It's kind of his nostalgia tour, his final tour. Bobby Lashley, he's now the head of a top faction, a faction which could be, potentially Hall of Fame worthy if they make it that good, because it has the potential to be. The Street Profits are very, very young. We've spoken about them so many times before. Them and Lashley together, that could be money. So yes, Lashley's, around the same age, I think, as Carlito, maybe even slightly older. But even still, I think Bobby Lashley should be getting a dominant win here.
I agree, and that's the hardest part for me, and that's why I did the what are we doing here on this one, just because I don't think you needed Carlito for Bobby Lashley to have a necessary dominant victory. There's other stars on the card you can book, and there's others. I mean, I wouldn't mind if he squashed Ray over Carlito at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
that
could have continued the story too with the LWO.
At least with the LWO, that would have made a lot more sense to me. I don't know though. We'll see how it plays out. I just wish better for Carlito because I think he's that talented and charismatic. Yeah. And more than anything, I miss the old music, man. I miss the old music.
I miss it too.
I think
everybody does.
Great. It was great. And it's Carlito, he's multi-generational superstar, right? He's, third generation, I believe, professional wrestler. To have him back in WWE is awesome anyway. Like I will say that. I was stoked to see it. Just of all people you could kind of bring back from that era of when I was in high school, right? Like I was excited to see him back. I do think, to your point, he should be squashed by Bobby Lashley, but I just don't want that.
Yeah. No, I get that feeling. I really, really do. And your idea about it being Ray instead. Ray just lost that title. There's some tensions maybe in the Latino World Order. Mysterio being squashed here maybe maybe Santos Escobar could make the case that Ray's starting to lose it or something like that. I do prefer that pitch. I really do. We got a couple of comments here. Firstly, Josh Markowitz saying 6 hours ahead of my normal time zone, but I'm here. Shout out to you, Josh. And him saying my new camera is better than your eyesight. I'm just using my phone now. That's what I'm doing instead. But let's now move on, and let's move on to, well, Clark's favorite faction, Damage Control. Because let's face it, over the last year and a half now, what damage have they controlled? I haven't disliked them as much as some people have, but listen, it clearly hasn't been the success they hoped for, and it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. Of course, at Crown Jewel, Kairi Sane returned. We spoke about it on the podcast earlier this week. Kairi Sane, she doesn't have the best history with Bayley. Bayley was the one who, took her out of WWE. Her and Io, they do have a history. So who knows? Is Damage Control over? Well, Bayley will be addressing it tonight on SmackDown, confirmed by WWE. Shad, what is your prediction? What do you think the future of Damage Control is going to hold heading into this segment with Bayley tonight?
Yeah, well, I don't think we get the breaking of them off the jump, but I think you're going to get the first step to the potential breakup of Damage Control and the potential matchup that will be between Bayley and Io Sky. I love bringing back Kairi Sane. I'm glad to see her back in the WWE. I think she was doing phenomenal work out in Japan. Her and Mercedes Moné was one of the best matches this entire year for women's wrestling and matches in general. And I think her and, Io reuniting with all the history they had back in like 2013, 2014 in Stardom. And it tied the thread of Bayley taking her out before she left the WWE around the pandemic time. I like it, man. I feel like it's very, very good storytelling to the art of everything, and it's all threaded together super well, and it adds a new element and a new juice to what is the Damage Control. Damage Control, when we had them initially debut, the presentation looked awesome in my opinion. I mean, we got to see Dakota come back after being released, and we got to see Io with the rumors of her potentially being a free agent and going back to Japan, coming back and being on the main roster from NXT. And just the booking of it hasn't been that great. They had them like lose initially with the tag team title, so I think it is a good time for them to, not be the perennial losers as a group, but have them break up and have that feud and that match between Bayley and Io. I mean, this is what the payoff is. This is one of the more meaningful storylines that we have in the women's division in WWE, especially with Io Sky. And I feel like that's what has been something that's kind of hampered Io's title reign, is because a lot of her matches are, one or like finished odd between Bayley, but there's no payoff with it. There's just another rinse and repeat match with either Bianca, Asuka, Charlotte. I feel like we have to get that payoff between them. And what I think is going to happen is they are going to potentially, have that match and break up. And I think you're going to see a new set group, maybe with Io Sky and Kairi Sane. Maybe more members add. Maybe they become a strong duo. But I think it'd be cool if we got like a Joshi faction in WWE led by, Io, and having Kairi with her, and maybe you got some talented like other Joshi wrestlers out there they may be able to sign. I'm not gonna put rumors out there and whatnot, or like you could add people within it. Like I think it'd be really cool. I think it'd be like you got Oscar too. Like I feel like that'd be really like the most dominant like women's group in WWE. If you could add three of the best Japanese women's wrestlers of all time. So I think that's what's going to lead to it. And maybe, the future of that, I won't book into there, but I do think we're going to get a brand new faction with Io and Kairi. And I think Bayley's going to get kicked out the whip. Maybe Dakota stays with Io. I think Dakota probably will stay with her too, but I think Bayley is getting kicked out the whip of Damage Control. And we're going to finally get like a new reset for Bayley and hopefully it's gonna be good for her because she definitely deserves it and needs it.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely, and I love that idea. I really do about a Joshi faction. I mean, that could be, I mean, on paper, one of the best factions in WWE in a long time. But then again, on paper, hey, damage control are quite good as well. So I don't know how much faith I have at this point. But whatever they need to do, there needs to be a story there. And I mean, listen, Michael Cole and commentary did cover the story this week when Kyrie did return about, her and Bayley. So let's hope, they make it make sense. They make it make sense why EO may have an issue now with Bayley because, of course, the history between Kyrie and her. But I'm excited for it. I really, really am. I hope we get a good payoff to this damage control feud. But now, let's jump in to the next topic. Actually, we got a comment first.
Yes.
And that comment... Oh, it's a controversial one. Ignacio is in the comments saying he cannot wait to be on the show tomorrow so we can have someone that makes some sense. Ignacio's back.
I think we've done pretty good on the weekly show. I think we have a lot of people that make sense, buddy. But
we're doing good. Ignacio is like a big Care Bear, dude. He's the nicest guy I know. I've always been. He's one of as his lone friend. I feel like. Honestly, it's just classic character work out of a good guy in Ignacio. I love you, Ignacio. I can't wait to do the show tomorrow.
But I mean, I still want to see him and David at WrestleMania. I mean, take it to the table. That table needs to get set up.
What are we doing?
I mean, come on, Chaos. Get the tables. Come on. Oh, let's move on now and let's
get the tables.
Chaos, make it a t-shirt. But let's now move on and let's talk about AEW, All Elite Wrestling, because of course Saturday night is all right for fighting, and tomorrow night will hopefully be the same because Sting will be teaming up with Darby Allin and Adam Copeland. I mean, that's a random trio, but one, I would never imagine to see together, but I love it. And they will be going on, facing Lance Archer and the Righteous, and I don't like this. I'm going to be honest about it straight, out of the gates. I do not like this. I mean, they spent the entire, Collision episode last week, a good portion of it, building up this new faction with Lance Archer and the Righteous. And now the next week, I'm presuming they're just going to have them lose to Sting, Darby, and Adam Copeland? Because no way of victory, losing. I mean, if they do, I'll take back what I said. But that, it's making last week make even less sense. Lance Archer, Righteous, just there, be jobbers basically, and they are better than that. If you're going to do factions, do them well. Don't just have generic factions just to take, losses. I mean, Butcher, Blade, we've seen them the last couple of years. I always thought they've had potential. They have a good luck, and just nothing came of it. And you can say the same for so many other factions in this company too. It's starting to annoy me, and I didn't even plan to go on this rant, and I've gone on it. But the Righteous, they're so great together. Lance Archer, I did an entire speech last week about why he's so great. Why are you just going to have them presumably just lose? Listen, again, if they do win, I'll take back what I said. But even still, if they do win, then that makes Sting look bad in his retirement tour, and Adam Copeland look bad going into whatever's next for him. It just makes no sense, does it, Anthony? What are your thoughts?
You want me to go on a rant now? So when I'm looking at this, first off, the fact Sting, Darby, and Edge tagging together, I really like that just for the simple fact that Edge has now got an opportunity to tag with a childhood hero in Edge. And it's kind of Sting, and it's kind of cool when you look at it where Sting was one generation, Adam Copeland was the next, Darby's the current. So it's kind of cool just having them together. Lance Archer and the Righteous, I'm hoping they do something with them, and I said that the last time I was on here when they formed, when we did the Collision review with Jake. I think you could do something with this. Now I know, the fear that they're going to get jobbed out. Based on AEW's track record, that would seem probably likely. But what they could do with this, and which is what I hope they do with this, there's also the factor of Christian and his group, who are feuding with Sting, Darby, and Adam. Who says it's going to be a clean finish? Archer and the Righteous could easily pick up the win, especially if Christian and his group gets involved. So I think that would be the smart play here. Long term, you got to do something with Archer and the Righteous. You cannot continue to treat Ring of Honor people as the stepchildren that are just the jobbers. Because you might as well just rename ROH Job Squad if that's what you want to
do. Rename ROH Job Squad. Well, I mean, Anthony, you on your rant last week where you spoke about Ring of Honor, and a lot of people did agree with you. It's clear that those frustrations are being felt right now. Those ROH originals really are just kind of feeling like, I mean, very very low mid card talent. You make a comparison, WWE's ECW. I do still have to agree with that one. But now let's move on and let's just talk. It's what's on everyone's lips right now. We've spoken about it like a month ago. We're bringing it back up because something needs to change. AEW Collision. It's got a good vibe to the show, right? It does feel different. A longer main event, more promo segments, and, well, usually a story throughout the show. We've not seen that in a few weeks. Maybe that's one of the issues. But how can we make people watch Collision? How can we make more people tune in every Saturday night to AEW Collision? Because right now the ratings are sinking and it's not good enough. I mean, 300,000 last week. I mean, I'd be shocked if that's enough for them to renew the contract. I really, really would be. Because that's below now what that time slot was doing before AEW went now. So, I mean, you're paying for something. You're paying big bucks for something, which is losing an audience. It doesn't look good. It really, really doesn't. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. Collision, if they can pull it off, I'd be so happy. I love an alternative. I think what AEW are doing has been great. But my question when it got announced is my same question now. Is there just too much wrestling in the week for people to come up with, to deal with, to watch, to process? Is there, too much? Do they really need to make sure they try and get some eyes away from WWE? Because I think that's what they need to do. Also, is this time slot just no good? Is nobody watching TV on Saturdays? Well, I mean, clearly it's now less than it was before Collision was on air, but whatever on that. The question today is, how can we make people tune in? How can we just draw people into this show? I think, firstly, cut the squash matches. There's 10 billion squash matches on these each week. Let's make everything feel important. Another thing, announce the card, maybe ahead of time a little bit more, and have some big stars on the show each week. Have some crazy moments on the show each week. Have it feel a bit more unpredictable, because for the most part, it is a very solid show. I mean, look, we've had some of the best TV matches so far this year on Collision, right? But it's the rest of the show. It just feels like fluff. All the middle of it, nearly every week, just feels like absolute nothingness. If you're going to do a weekly show, make it substantial. Make it mean something. Tell a story, because story is king in wrestling. Otherwise, I've said it a million times, people would watch MMA. Story is what hooks people in, and they need to be telling one throughout the middle of Collision. But I'll start with you, Shad. What would you do? How would you make people, how would you make Collision more important, for lack of a better phrase?
Yeah, I mean, there has to be an identity with AEW Collision. I feel the identity of what it was initially from the creation of it is obviously completely gone now. The person that you kind of built the show around, who was a very prominent superstar and a very popular wrestler in CM Punk, is not there. So now the identity is gone. They haven't found a way to fill the void, or at least shaping the identity to make it its own show. To me, Collision is more so the, like a little bit of a little bit more salt and pepper on a Rampage, right? Like, there's just a lot of good wrestling matches, but there isn't as much things threaded to it. And initially, I thought it was going to be, okay, maybe the Bullet Club Gold, maybe this is their show now. Maybe they're going to have it really circled around Jay White. But at this point, you see them on Dynamite, and I feel like Dynamite is the meat and potatoes of what AEW weekly television is. And I feel like they need to, give a little bit of that wait to Collision and kind of balance it out a little bit. Have your prominent stars on there. You know, if you have an MJF and Bullet Club Gold storyline happening there, well then put the Adam Copeland and Christian Cage storyline prominent on Saturday, which they are doing this week, which I think is a good step to it. And kind of creating a balance, still keeping weekly storylines threaded throughout the show, making sure the users are the viewers are knowing that, oh, I can't wait to see what's going to happen next Saturday because this happened this past Saturday, And I mean, they got people that they don't use. You can kind of highlight them on Collision. Like you can use a person like Thunder Rosa, who I don't know what's happening with her. I don't know if she's still injured or not, but like you can make her like one of the top dogs in the women's division. You can have her have feuds with, I don't know, Statlander or Sheeta or whoever the women's champ is, or you got people like Andrade, whatnot. So I feel it is something that you need to just put a little bit more value to in regards to programming. Like you said, like there needs to be more storylines to it. It just can't be great matches upon matches.
Yeah, no, undoubtedly. I mean, you've heard me go on that rant a million times, Shard. Matches need to mean something in wrestling. Otherwise, I mean, you can have great wrestling, but unless it's just outstanding wrestling and it's like a dream match or something, it's just not good enough for me personally. I'll make a few exceptions to it. Like, for example, an Okada Danielson for the first time. I'll make an exception for that. But on a weekly show, like, you gotta be having stories. You gotta be having them. Anthony, what are your thoughts? How would you make people tune in to Collision every Saturday night?
That's the thing. They were always going to fight against the grain here with a Saturday night show. It's difficult. AEW has a stacked roster, probably too stacked because they don't have a place to put these people. And that is one of the big problems, is because they have so much talent. And I'm really not a big fan of brand splits. I know WWE does it, but it probably would have made sense here to do that. They did the soft one when Punk was on there. They really should have done it. I think in this situation, because it's a Saturday spot, you probably should have split the rosters because you might have gained more interest from people going, hey, wait, Darby's on Saturday. I got to watch Saturdays, or whoever. I think that was smart. It would have been the smart play. The problem is, and a lot of times I don't think AEW fully gets this, is that, like you said, storytelling is the lifeblood of this business. And you really need to create these stories to get people interested to come back to see more. Booking the show like it's PWG or a Saturday indie show where you're just going to do dream matches is not successful for long-term weekly TV. That's a one-off. The first All In, that was a one-off. But booking weekly TV requires you to create a compelling story to get people to watch. I think that's one of those things. Making Collision feel different, which it did originally when it first came on, it had a different feel, which is not something you could say about WWE with Raw and SmackDown. Both shows, essentially, they're shot the same, their production's the same, there's no difference. Collision, they could have done that. But again, a Saturday slot is going to be rough for them. But if you are focusing more on stories and making stories exclusive to Dynamite and making them exclusive to Collision and cutting out the fat of the jobber type talent and really just the core, really important talent, and have both shows focus on just that and trim the jobber type people that you don't see for 3 months because they're in catering and the company forgets they're employed. If you do that, you might be able to gain some more interest in Collision and Dynamite.
I mean, yeah, it is true. They need to have, story throughout it. They need to focus on, certain stars, because we often talk about how many stars feel underutilized. I mean, I'm going to say something controversial here. Well, maybe it's controversial, maybe it's not, to be honest. I actually think a lot of people probably are feeling this way. And that is, I think just Collision was better when CM Punk was around. Was CM Punk an issue backstage or whatever, according to people, whatever, right? Of course, if, the decision had to be made to fire him, that had to be made. That's not what I'm talking about here. But since he's left, I mean, what's changed here, right? Was he involved creatively? We can probably guess, so at this point, I mean, it's one of those things where it felt like every episode of the story running through it, every segment felt like they were, given opportunities to underutilize talent. Now it just feels like fluff, like I said. I mean, I think you need to do what you were doing when CM Punk was there, because I felt like that was working for the most part. I don't just think the name CM Punk made it a good show. I think it was also the fact that it just genuinely was a good show. Clark, what are your thoughts then? What do you think AEW should do?
Weather the storm. People like to look at success as if it's linear all the time, and it's not. It's up and down, and things can get bad, and you can bounce back, and you can be successful still. To your point about CM Punk, yeah, he was a huge deal on the show at the time. And my answer to, like, if you want to really boost it right now, reveal the devil mask and it's CM Punk on Collision, and then see what happens next Saturday. Do that. That's a simple one, right? Or reveal whoever it is. Doesn't matter. It could be anybody, right? Anthony's got an article coming out soon about it. He's got a great theory. There's plenty of theories. It doesn't necessarily have to be Punk. If it is Punk, of course, that's explosive. But, I mean, if it's anyone, it doesn't matter. We've all said the same thing. More storytelling. They've got one great story going across both brands. It shows up on Wednesday nights and it shows up on Saturday nights. Reveal it on a Saturday night and then see what happens the next week. We also have, and not to make excuses for AEW, I'm not trying to make a big thing, but college football season, college basketball season have kicked off. So you're competing against major sports in the US. Market-wise, that's just tough. And you got to weather. That's why I go back to what I said about weathering the storm. You have to weather that storm. Because at some point, Monday Night Football is always going to affect Monday Night Raw. It just will. That's the nature of that beast. That's the nature of being in the network television business. 100%, right? And seasonally, it's going to be different in the spring and summer than it is in the fall. Given the sports that are on TV in prime time on a Saturday night going head to head with a Collision. That is hard to deny. That's just a hard truth, right? The same thing happens in other situations. You look at Impact is probably affected by Thursday Night Football, and they're both on streaming services. Is the most interesting part. In the fall, it's different than it is in the summer and the spring.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big part of this, as much as I do agree that the quality of the show has not been, as good as it was out of the gates when it felt like they were having some momentum and we were really excited. I mean, the song we all love.
Yeah.
Right? We all love the song. We all love the format. I feels old school the way that they do like those little mini promos out of the gates to start. I actually totally dig that personally, aesthetically, and I think they need to stick with it. And I love Nigel McGuinness on commentary. Can't get enough of him. I mean, there's a lot of good to say about Collision, even despite a little bit of a rut. Yeah. I would call it like almost like the sophomore slump, even though it is still year one.
Yeah. Honestly, I do get that, Clark. I want to very quickly go. It's just something that you said at the start there. CM Punk being the devil. I mean, I have a theory it's not going to happen, right? But just imagine if they had all the rumors and all this, but the disagreements were true. It was all true. But Tony Khan said to him, "All right, Punky, I'm gonna, let you go for a few months. We're gonna say you're fired. You're gonna take a few months suspension, and then you're gonna come back just in time to face MJF at World's End. And we're running back Cena versus Punk, but you're Cena and he's Punk."
Ooh.
It won't happen, but
say less.
It won't happen, but it would be.
Chills.
Consider me sports entertained if it does, but unfortunately, it feels like we're in trouble here. But let's hope they find a way back. Let's hope they find a way back, because I say this all the time, right? I mean, sure, as anybody in wrestling media, but also a wrestling fan, we want WWE to succeed. We want AEW to succeed. We want TNA Wrestling to succeed. It's more content for us to cover, but also it's more content for us to just enjoy. So we want these things to succeed, and let's hope they do. But we hope that you guys enjoyed this podcast. And if you did, please hit the like button and subscribe if you're on YouTube. A cheeky 5 stars on Spotify goes a long way. We really appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow to discuss Friday Night SmackDown. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.